take it away.
All right. Today is Monday, June 8th, and this is the Wilmette Park District regular meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners. Before we start, I'd like to just say I've been very impressed by and grateful for the flexibility, creativity, sense of urgency that has been shown by all of the Park District staff. Just sitting through the Parks and Rec meeting earlier and thinking of all the things that had, all the decisions that had to be made, all the plans that had to happen. It's pretty amazing. You know, we've looked at this as more of a challenge and not, you know, kind of bemoan the fact that, you know, things aren't the way they used to be. And I think that attitude has served us very, very well. So thank you for that. The first thing on the thing is a roll call. So Steve, if you could take us away.
Sure. Commissioner Abbott? Oh, everyone has to unmute themselves. You can hold your space bar down. I can see him. He's here. Commissioner Murdoch? Commissioner Murdoch, present? This is off to a great start. Commissioner Schisler? Yes, I see him. Commissioner Clark?
Here.
Commissioner Wolf?
Here.
Commissioner Goebel?
Here.
Commissioner Anderson?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, communications and correspondence. There's nothing in the packet, although I think we had some stray stuff from last meeting that came in right after the meeting. And I just forwarded you something about maybe half hour ago, Steve, from a resident asking if we were putting warning signs up because of the sheet piling at the beach at South Beach. And obviously we haven't. It seems sort of self-obvious, but no, I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, Superintendent Solberg and Gwen and I will discuss further tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do you have any ability to public comment? Are you getting anything coming?
I did not receive any emails in advance for public comment, but this is where we're going to pause and give people who might be watching on YouTube a chance to communicate that way. So I'm going to let that go and keep an eye on it. I think I'll just give you all a little bit of informal public comments that I've received over the last 24 hours as our programs are coming back online, as that is requiring us to rehire or bring in the staff that we had initially planned on using. We're getting a lot of emails from both potential counselors and lifeguards and such, but also from their parents, and they're concerned that their children were offered a job in January that may not exist today. And I just want to just inform the board and anyone watching that that's unfortunately going to be the circumstance. You know, we aren't employing nearly as many people because we're not able to do as many of our programs or run our facilities the way we typically do. So while we don't enjoy the fact that we're unable to fulfill a job offer, the reality is our world and our programming has changed drastically. And that changes our need for staff drastically. And unfortunately right now, everything is operating at a smaller capacity than it otherwise would.
Steve, is there any opportunity for those people? I know things have loosened up a lot in terms of unemployment. Even if they haven't been working, can they make a claim, or is that not allowed?
Not for individuals who haven't worked for us. Individuals who did work for us that we had to let go during our shutdown, or at the start of our shutdown, they're all eligible. Many of them have applied. Unfortunately, you know, we're hearing a lot of stories of the state not being as responsive. I think they're overwhelmed. And so unfortunately, people aren't being as made whole as they otherwise probably should be per the law. And the only thing that I'd add on top of any of that is the Wilmette Foundation has actually started an employee relief fund. And there is a meeting tomorrow between the members of the foundation who are receiving those applications to review them. They're keeping it completely anonymous. They're not involving me at all. I do know that they have a handful of applications at this point.
Great, okay.
Commissioner Abbott has a question, and Brian, I think you're going to have to unmute yourself. For some reason, I'm not allowed to unmute you. Go ahead.
This is news, and very good news about the Wilmette Foundation. So a relief fund, and I'm not sure if I heard it right. So this is a relief fund for part-time furloughed employees. What is it that they're doing?
Correct.
I'm very impressed by this.
They've created some guidelines as to who's eligible, and it does include those that were let go when we made that determination around part-time staff. It also would include potentially current employed full-time staff who maybe a spouse is out of work or things like that. So they have some general guidelines, and then they have some criteria behind the scenes that they're using to evaluate the applications. They have some dollar amounts associated with it. If they ever max out on their dollar amounts, they will consider looking at community contributions from other entities or people making additional donations. But they very much want to support the staff of the district who make a lot of the things happen day in and day out for the community.
I'm so impressed. That's wonderful. That's really wonderful. Okay, thank you.
At this point, we have no comments on our YouTube live channel. So, on to you.
Right. Next item, new business, is the Hibbard Park Stormwater Project discussions.
So joining us, you'll see Bridget Berger from the Village of Wilmette, Darren Olson from Christopher Burke Engineering, and Tom Richlick from Gaywalt Hamilton Engineering. And I think Ms. Berger is going to kick things off for us and then turn it over to Darren for more information.
Thank you, Steve, and hi, Commissioners. Thank you again for having us tonight. And before I jump in to introduce Darren to talk about Phase 2 at Hibbard Park, I just wanted to let everyone know that we're off to a really good start at Community Playfield. We're working ahead of schedule, and we kind of had a big milestone last week with setting storm trap pieces. So up until this point, there's been a lot of preparation, but the vault is starting to take shape, and I think we have an amazing team in place. If anybody wants a tour, I'd be happy to escort you out there and give you a tour of the site. But it's going really well so far, and we're ahead of schedule. So that's probably the best news. We have the same great team of consultants that are going to work with us on Phase 2, starting with Darren Olson. I will say that we're taking everything we learned during Phase 1 and we're going to make it better. And part of that is this early engagement with you and with our residents. So after we definitely wanted an opportunity to bring the plan at an early stage to the commissioners. And then the next step is to talk to the stakeholders, the residents who are directly involved. So that's the plan moving forward. So with that as an introduction, I'll turn it over to Darren, who will walk you through the site plan.
Great. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right, it's wonderful. It's great to see everybody again. Steve, I'm going to share my screen. Is that all right?
Yeah, I made it where anyone can share, so go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. So let me do that real quick, and then I'll pull up the plan. Sorry, give me 1 second here while I... Okay, can everyone see this, see the plan in front of them?
Yes.
Wonderful. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit here, and I'll kind of orient us, and then I will zoom in on certain areas for us to talk about. So this is Hibbard Park, and where we're at in the process is we've taken Alternative 1 from our discussions back in August, which was the preferred alternative, and we've began the process of advancing that through some preliminary engineering. If you recall back in August, everything was very conceptual at the time, and we've taken that to the next level where we will be preparing 65% preliminary engineering drawings and those will be somewhere towards the middle to the end of this month. So these aren't those drawings. These aren't 65% engineering drawings, but we're in the process, and we thought this would be a great time to get some input. So as we look at this, north is generally to our right. We see Skokie Boulevard. This exhibit is lined up so that Skokie Boulevard is along the south side, or I'm sorry, along the lower part of the exhibit, but that's actually the eastern boundary of the park. We see Hill Street coming in towards the north. You see the very familiar Community Rec Center. And then we see some different shapes that I'll explain here quickly. The dark gray shape is the limits of disturbance, and that is where generally the work will be occurring. The lighter gray, which starts to overlap the parking lots, that's actually from the Tanucci study that was done back in the spring and summer of 2019. Those are the footprints of the various potential expansions that he came up with. And those are areas that we can't expand or we can't place the storm trap vault under there because of a potential future building going there. So alternative one, I'm going to zoom in a little bit on the actual storm trap vault itself. So what we begin to see is this somewhat jagged shape here, which I'll outline with my cursor. So this jagged shape is generally the underground vault. We're looking at a couple different tweaks to this alignment here, just to make it a little bit smaller, potentially a little bit deeper, just to help kind of bring it within the workable footprint and make sure we're well outside of root zones of any trees. The bottom of the vault will vary then depending on where we land. The bottom of the vault will be at either 604 or 607 elevation. The ground level here is about 622, and the top of the vault would be about 619. So the vault it'll either be, in the current configuration about 11.5 to 12 feet deep, or maybe as deep as 15 feet deep and a little bit smaller footprint. In general, water will be coming in. The majority of the water will come in from a large storm sewer on Hill Street. That water will come in, all of course underground, through a control structure, and then a approximately 60-inch diameter pipe into the vault here. So that's one entry point of water into the vault is on Hill Street, and that's taking surcharge water off of the surrounding neighborhood. And the other place where water will be coming into the vault is from the south side, coming in from Glenview through a storm sewer and coming in on the south leg of the vault. Once water is in the vault, and it will only enter the vault during the larger storm events, after that storm event has passed, there will be sensors in the storm sewer system, which will then tell the pump station, because this, if you recall from our discussions, we've condensed the footprint of this vault such that we've had to go deep enough that it's now below, the bottom of this is below the storm sewer system, which is unlike Community Playfield. So here we need to get the water back out of the vault and back into the storm sewer system. So we need some sort of mechanical system to do that, to lift the water up, and that will be a pump station. And we've worked with Park District staff. We had a meeting several weeks ago, and it was a great meeting with Park District staff and their consultant to begin to locate this pump station. We wanted to do it in an area that's really as far away from everything in the park that we could, and get as close to the outlet, because water comes in on Hill Street and comes in on the south, but all the water is going to be exiting the pump station towards Hill Street after a storm event. So after the storm event, when the vault will be about 3/4 full, because the top of the vault will actually drain back out by gravity, the bottom of the vault once the sensors alert in the pump station that there's capacity in this village's storm sewer system, then the vault will dewater through this pump station and then back into the storm system. Again, all of this is underground and back into the storm sewer system. Now, when I say it's underground, there are a couple of pieces that are above ground. As we zoom in on this pump station, and this is our preliminary pump station configuration. It is in the process of being revised, slightly shifting actually into the village's right of way here a little bit, to tuck it even further away from any activities in the park. There's going to be potentially a valve vault here, although we think we've maybe eliminated this below ground valve vault. There's a wet well where water, when it enters into the pump station, it goes into this wet well and then gets pumped up and back into the village's storm sewer system. There will be 2 above grade items. One is going to be a control panel, and we can see the dimensions here on that control panel. 6 feet by 2 feet by about 6 foot tall. This is going to look similar to maybe a larger control panel on a large signals by intersections. Maybe it could be silver, it can paint it any color, but it's going to be above ground kind of rectangular structure that's going to have all of the controls for the pump station in there. And the other one is going to be a generator that's going to have that's going to be about 8 feet by 4 feet by about 6 feet tall. This would be a backup generator in the event the power ever went out. This vault could still be dewatered. Now, all of this area, we're working with our landscape architect and the villages, and then we'll also be working with your landscape architect, on some screening in this area. Obviously, there's going to be some manhole panels and things like that at grade, and then these above grade items. And so we'll work to screen these off from the rest of the park and from the adjacent residents as much as we can. And you can see here we've realigned the path here a little bit just to get it, again, away from these items. And we'll work with your staff on adding as much landscaping and buffer there as possible. As we move towards the northern side, back up towards Wilmette Avenue, as you recall here, there's a auto service station here. One of another big consideration is access. How do we get in and out? And this is during construction. How do we get in and out during construction? If I go back to the pump station real quick, speaking of access, one very nice thing about having the pump station here is that if the village needs to come in and access it after construction, for maintenance or servicing, it's very easy for the village just to pull up and do that on Hill Street, and we'll work with your staff on exactly the best way to accommodate that. On the access during construction, we've worked with the village, and we've talked with several contractors, and based on what we're seeing out at phase 1, we're envisioning that access would come in, trucks would come in and leave via Wilmette Avenue. And this is a section here that's owned by the Park District. We would put a temporary haul road of some sort in here that would allow construction traffic. They need to come in and remove quite a bit of dirt first. All this dirt for this storm trap facility would get removed, or most of it would at first. That would get hauled out. Then the storm trap pieces, or actually the stone bottom trucks would come in next. They would lay the stone bottom. Then the storm trap trucks would come in, assemble the storm trap pieces, and as we kind of paint ourselves out of this area, probably finishing this northern section last, then there would be a little bit more truck and storm trap traffic occurring all at the same time. But again, what we're proposing now at this phase of the engineering is to have all that traffic come in and out through Wilmette Avenue. I'm trying to think if there's any other, we'll have the storm sewer that's coming in from Glenview. Again, we're in preliminary engineering on that. So we'll work with staff as that gets closer to being finalized. I don't know, Bridget, did you have any things from my notes that I potentially missed?
I don't think so. Unless there's commissioner questions we can answer.
Yeah, we'd be happy to answer questions.
Hey, Darren, it's Gordon. The entrance from the north side, is that something different than what we had seen before? I don't remember it going through the residential, there's a few houses there that would be obviously impacted, especially one right next door by all the truck traffic going in and out. Is that new, or is that an accommodation for other reasons?
That's a good question. I think when we had originally developed those concepts that you saw, I don't think we had developed them to a level of determining exactly where access was going to come from. And so we actually identified 5 different access points for this site, and worked with village staff and contractors, and also some of Park District staff to discuss those. We looked at coming in from Wilmette, coming in from Hill Street, coming in from Skokie Boulevard, and then also coming in through, one option was coming through the areas on Community Rec Center. This one was the best of all of those alternatives. And I can go through why we discarded the other ones, but this one rose to the top as being the best alternative for access.
Okay. And just for clarification, in case anybody from the public is listening, when you talk about water coming from Glenview, you mean Glenview Road, not from Glenview.
Yes. Very good correction. Thank you for that. Yes, we're not accepting any water from Glenview. We're trying to manage Wilmette's water.
No non-resident water. Commissioner Wolf.
I just had a question, and this might be a little bit premature, but one of our bigger discussions around the community playfields involved the location of the manhole covers, whether or not they were above ground or below ground. Again, this might be a premature time to ask that, but do we have any inclination of where those might be in regards to this project?
That's a great question. And that's one that we've discussed preliminarily with Park District staff. And we believe we can locate access manholes either buried or putting them far enough outside, kind of by the sidewalks and by corners where they would not be within the playfield. We have not yet established how many of those will be or exactly where those will be at, but we are thinking in advance about that, and would either tuck them in a corner, or if we had to bury an access one, we could do that as well.
Great. I know that'll be critical, like around the baseball fields and such, because you don't want a kid tripping on one.
Absolutely. Yeah, we would locate them in a corner, and we've also Tom from GHA has done a great job in getting us some preliminary thoughts on where certain field configurations could be for the soccer field and other things, and so we're going to use all of that to make sure that we've done our best, and we'll be working with Park District staff to tuck these out of the way. Perfect.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Abbott?
Yeah, these questions in no particular order. Do we know yet I see the trees that are coming down where the tank is located. There are a number of large trees there along Skokie Boulevard, and I'm not sure if they're coming down. They're in the setback there, or right on the edge of the setback. So could you maybe take us through the trees are coming down, the trees you think we're saving?
Yes.
it had been just to go back in time. There was like we're going to take down 40 trees, and then we ended up saying no, we're going to take down 8 trees. So I'm not like holding you to that, but where do we end up on this?
Yes, we show the tree removals here with these X's,
right?
And we have them labeled on this exhibit. So starting on the north, this is I believe the 7-inch maple. We've got a basswood, coffee tree. So those are these 3 here.
Yeah.
We've got 4,
and
5.
Are these the only trees? The ones along Skokie are saved?
Yes, the large ones along Skokie here are saved.
Being saved. Oh. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I mean, there's nothing we can, looking at your configuration, those 8 trees, it is what it is. Okay. All right.
Great.
What's the biggest one? 18-inch, 18-inch, 36. 15 elm. Okay. All right, next question. An elevation sensitivity. Is there any need to change how is the field going to be put back with regard to the elevation? So we're going up, down, how are we changing? How's the park going to look different from an elevation standpoint?
So I can answer part of that question, and I believe Tom from GHA may be able to answer another part. So in general, we can put the fields back at the same elevation, certainly providing some fine grading to help drainage in this area where we've worked with Park District staff and we know where the drainage problems are at.
Yeah.
And so our intention would be to help with any drainage situations.
To help our park with additional drainage to make sure that we don't flood. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, help your park so that the poorly draining areas within the footprint of where we're doing work, we would provide drainage for those.
Okay, but will the ball fields, for instance, will they be going back in the same elevation? Will they be raised?
We're working with Tom at GHA. He has provided us with some preliminary thoughts on how he'd like some of the fine grading to look here.
Okay.
So
right.
I'm happy to share that with to jump over to him now, or we can do that at the end. Whichever.
I'm always interested in talking to Tom from Gilwald Hamilton, but we can save that in case there are any other. He can add up the questions. There are some detention areas over there by the parking lot. They won't be affected at all. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. You said that the storm, under certain storm events, would activate the vault. In other words, the water coming in from the Glenview Road and from here would only be activated under certain rain conditions. What is it like a 1-inch rain, or how much rain does it take before these pumps start? How often will that happen?
That's a great question. That's actually part of the ongoing design that we're working on. There will be rear structures in some of these manholes that will allow, once water gets up to a certain elevation in the storm sewer system, will allow the water to then enter the vault. And the pumps won't start right away. The pumps will wait until the water level in the storm sewer system goes down. But part of what we're doing is, right now we're in the really the optimizing of the system with our models to make sure that we can make the most use of the storage and take the water in truly when it's needed. So that's something that probably within the next 2 weeks to maybe a month, we'll be able to come back to you with final information on that.
Okay, so acoustics and noise is always hard to get your arms around. We are talking about a pumping station that's below grade, is that right? And
That's
so
correct.
will the at nighttime we look to get below 40 decibels, I think. Is that we don't want people with their windows open at night. Is it going to be, when the pumps kick on, if it's in the middle of the night, is that something that the neighbors will perceive, or will it be, what? I realize predicting decibel levels is very difficult, though it is possible. So do we have any sense of what those pumps put out or how much dampering they'll get? Will we know it when those pumps kick on?
From what my mechanical staff has told me, that because the pumps are below ground,
Right.
they would not be audible, but I can see if they can if there is some information on decibel levels, and I'm happy to report back on that.
Well, pumps aren't that loud to begin with. Generators are, but pumps are. Generators would not run except mostly from they're being tested. Which leads me to the next question. The generator you're saying is 4 foot, 8 foot by 4 by 6 foot tall. It would be exposed to the elements. It would be outdoors, no building around it.
That is one of the things that we were working on with village staff. If we put a building around the generator, the issue becomes that the building needs to be quite a bit larger than the generator in order to walk within it and get around, and then ventilation. Yes. So that's something that we have not yet come to a final decision on. Okay.
Well, obviously, concerns about operating machine. Well, obviously, it belongs to the village. So they have to maintain a generator that's outdoors, although they're built for that. But we want to make sure that they're safe as well. Any fans or anything to keep the generator cool. That we can keep people safe with the generator. And the generator is apt to make noise. Though again, we're talking about. Maybe should let Bridget can address this. How often, maybe never, that a generator would have to kick in. Certainly, it would be a very rare event. So maybe the noise isn't as big of an issue, I assume. But I'd like to hear that the generator would only be tested during the day and things like that. So, what does it mean for a generator to be in there? And I'll let Bridget can address that later. Will we be storing soil on site? I see this area over here and the ball diamond that's sort of, there. Is that area, is that for stockpiling?
Yes, during construction, some of that may be used for stockpiling.
So reduce the number of trucks that have to come in and out of the site. So we'll be saving topsoil and whatever soils we need to rebuild. Okay.
That's it.
Do you know how many trucks or how much soil we're talking about removing on this site?
Yes.
A lot of trucks.
Yes. It will be hundreds of trucks coming in and then back out to remove the soil. Okay. And we've estimated about 275 trucks will be required to bring in the storm truck pieces.
Okay. What prevents this tank from being surcharged inside? Is it very similar to the community playfields? Does the overage start to fill on Hill Street? Where does the extra water go, or does it come into the park?
The extra water here would start to pond in the streets, just where it does now. When this tank reaches capacity. The low spots here are areas like Valley View, Phelan, and Patrick. Those are the low spots, and so that's where water would start to pond in the street, just where it does now. But when this begins to fill up, the capacity of the tank's gone, then water will start to pond where it currently does.
Yeah. All right. We've got Gawald Hamilton on. I assume that Gawald Hamilton is there to help not only do peer reviews, but is handling the design of the playfields themselves, and basically handling our issues with you. When you have a question, an engineering question with regard to putting the fields back together, Gawald Hamilton is handling that, right?
Absolutely. We call Tom.
Okay. All right.
Happy to be here.
Hi, Tom. Good to see you. Do you have any concerns, Tom, about the elevations, or do you think we'll be, for the most part, we'll be clearing up any low spots? Are we going to get a better field? Are we sacrificing anything here for this tank with regard to playability of these fields or the park?
No, the odd thing is, according to my discussions with staff, the northern area of this park is really not used for any active recreation. It's just sort of good open grass. And by the premise of removing the trees in order to fit the tank in here, we're going to afford the opportunity to have a field, a rectangular field, should the park district ever need it in its programs. Further, we'll be looking at some proposed just regrading of the outfield of the baseball field, tying it in with the berm that exists, and potentially proposing a little more berming to separate the baseball field and soccer field, make it a little better use out there. So good opportunities all around. There's not much of it, other than the disturbance, there's not a whole lot of downside to the park district.
Well, now the berm that you're talking about is over the over part of that finger of the tank that's extending along Skokie Boulevard. Can it take the surcharge of all that soil?
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're going to rebuild that little, I'll call it a sledding hill, but we're going to rebuild that berm essentially the way it was, the way it is.
We have some ideas as to how to expand it, and we can talk about that. You want me to show that now?
Well,
or do you want me to come in later?
Well, I have no idea what we're doing. So yeah, sure, I guess. I mean, is this something you want some input on?
I've got you. You're welcome to throw input at it. This is.
You can't stop me.
You might be pushing at 65%. I'm at about 10 here. So this is very colorful because it's right out of AutoCAD. But it gives you an idea of kind of what we're looking at. So our plan just says north straight up. We've got Green Bay Road, Hill Street.
This is excellent.
Okay. Super colorful. So the project will leave the baseball infield and backstop alone. Okay, this dark black line here is the shape of the berm. The outer line is the toe of the berm, and the upper line is the top. What we're looking at doing is
how many feet is that?
About 5 feet, Brian.
Okay,
about 5 feet.
Right.
And when we're done, we're going to propose about the same height, but we'll extend it out along the outside of the baseball field, sort of like a modified outfield fence. And
keep the ball rolling out into Skokie Boulevard. Sure.
Yes, so sort of lining up with Hill Street Extended. And what this allows for is a good, it'll work like a seating area for parents, for watching the game. It'll also, what we've talked with Seabell staff is maybe looking at widening the berm on this side so it can serve as watching some, recreation if soccer, lacrosse, or something else goes on the north side here. The drainage, in addition to the under drains that Chris Burke's office is looking at adding to help the baseball field, we're going to pitch from the infield out to the toe of the berm, and I'm going to run an under drain underneath a fast draining warning track. I've used this in places all over northern Illinois here where we've had the same problem, where you got an outfield of the baseball field is also the squishiest soil that you could possibly dream up, and very oftentimes it's already native plants growing into the outfield, which gives the term for the right fielder, right? That's the daisy picker, which was my job in Little League. So this is just like that. This one will provide a 350 some odd foot long under drain, 10 feet wide at the toe of the berm. Warning tracks will be maintained in the same manner as your infield, so you gotta grade them out couple times during the season, and just to keep them draining, you'll add stone and add infield mix at the same time, so it'll operate in the same manner. And you'll see this the same aggregated stuff that we've used at Little League, Park District, college, high school levels, and we can give you some examples if you're interested. But it's a really, really interesting product that I worked with a gravel designer to make this up. So that should alleviate that.
How much soil between the top of the tank? What's your minimum, or what are you looking for?
The toe of the berm I have at 22, and I think the top of the tank, Darren, is 18 or 19
inches.
No, 622 is the elevation of the toe of the berm. I think the top of the vault is 619.
That's correct.
3 feet.
So 3 feet. So
more than we got community play field.
Correct.
So you're not concerned. Okay.
Lots of space.
And you're getting your drainage from the soils on top of it. Well, you're putting that big drain in. Okay. All right.
Yes. Right. Then I'll have a drain around that whole outfield. So lastly, I've got a U8 soccer field in here, and it wasn't that I was actively seeking to get that. That's just sort of the the easy field that fits. The outer dashed blue line here would be the limit of the rectangular field grading, which would be the play field plus a very comfortable overlap run out for players that are, going a little beyond the Call of Duty and continuing for another 20 feet. But it gives us some safety zone between there and Skokie. It gives us some safety zone before we get to the path on the west. And then, as I discussed, we could expand this berm here to allow for more soil to remain on site, and also to provide a good buffer between errant soccer balls and errant softballs, not creating much interplay.
And you got enough pitch to get the water off of this field?
Yes. Well, and we have a little different situation than we do at Community, where that one was depressional storage. We had a much tighter design parameters. Here, we're just going to get our 1% across and crown it north and south. It's not an actively used field, and U8 fields and the size of it, you're not going to be able to discern the grade. Okay. Especially the grade will be more than the children playing on it. So, right. So.
Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Absolutely. I'll. Great. Does anyone else have any questions on that before I hand it off, or I can?
Sure. Before I go on to any other commissioners, I just want to point out that this is a very initial, high-level kind of concept for what we could do with the fields. This isn't something that we have settled on. There's active users of these fields that we would want to bring in on and get input on. So this is I don't want anyone who watches this meeting thinking this is some sort of final design. This is a concept that Gaywald Hamilton put together based on the one meeting we've had, and we have yet to really kind of look at it with a real critical eye at this point.
Absolutely. More opportunity than anything else. Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch, I believe I saw your hand next.
Yes, with respect to this, I'll hold my questions for later. So I've got questions going back to the other drawings. So I can hold if anybody else wants to ask questions.
There you go.
All right. I guess I just wanted to follow up on some questions already asked. The first, and forgive me with respect to the manholes, seems like all of my kids decided to have everybody over today, so I moved 3 times over the course of this meeting. I want to make sure I heard correctly with respect to the manholes, that there will be none in any of the playing areas. Is that correct? That if there are any, will just be on a perimeter. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's what we haven't designed any yet at all, but our goal is going to be to keep them out of the play areas.
Got it. And then, is this the actual size of the vault, or does that show the overdig as well? I ask because we're going to talk about trees for a couple of minutes.
This is the actual size of the vault.
Okay. So, which is obviously, as you're aware, there was a lot of talk about trees at the community play fields. And as I look at this, I think we do want to be candid with our residents about what could or probably would happen. That entire line of trees on what would be the northwest angle, if that's the actual vault, we're going to lose a bunch of those trees in all probability, aren't we? Realistically speaking?
That's a good question. So we walked the site with the village's forester, and based on those discussions, and I should say one thing, this footprint here is the original one from back in August, and that this jagged line here, what was originally proposed was to have sheet pile put along this line here so that they would not have to slope back and get into...
To limit the overtake, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
What we've done, part of my previous discussion about maybe making this vault a little bit deeper, what we're looking at is potentially making the vault a little bit deeper, which is what we've got, like this final, pending final design here with this, 604 or 607 elevation. But primarily based on our walkthrough of the site, what will happen is I believe this edge is going to come back probably 20-ish feet, and there will be some pullback on this edge down here as well, for a couple of reasons, but for one of them is going to be just to make sure that we're far enough away from the root zones of those trees. So that's a great question, and that's something that we're in the process of working on right now.
Okay, great. So future drawings will show us the overdig as well in relation to the tree canopy. And so then along Skokie Boulevard, to the extent that some of the construction will be under the canopy, is there a plan to prune the root system 6 months ahead of time to give the trees a higher chance of survival? What kind of work have we talked about with the arborists along those lines?
That's exactly it. I mean, the two things were, can we move the vault footprint in a little bit, which is what we're working on, and then the second would be, you're talking about root pruning and making sure that those trees, especially the big ones there's some very, very large cottonwoods right off of Skokie, you're making sure that those root systems were pruned in advance of construction.
Our residents love cottonwoods.
I'm aware of that.
So you are thinking about the overdig, you're thinking about root pruning, whatever we can do to preserve as many of these trees as possible during construction. Okay.
Yes, that's a lot of analysis has gone into that, and staging of construction and how we're going to get trucks into the bottom and everything like that. So yes, you're right along our line of thinking right now as we develop this plan further. Okay,
thank you. And then one last question for Bridget, and I'm sure it will come up here, but I know it's going to come up again when we get to Thornwood in the not too distant future. How are you going to decide whether you have a mobile or a permanent generator on these two sites? What does that process look like?
Well, obviously the village board has the ultimate say on that, but I think our recommendation is going to be to have a permanent on-site generator in this location.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. my turn. My question is well, Brian, Commissioner Abbott brought this up too. So my question is going to the pump station where its location is, and whether that, especially if there is a generator, since the generator will need to be tested periodically, whether that is, whether that is the best location, that it would be, it's rather close to the home, to the house that's to the northwest there, whether that location can be elsewhere that might be a little bit quieter for the neighbors.
One of the thoughts we had with this was to minimize disturbance of the park as much as possible in an ongoing situation. And so we felt that, given that there's some landscaping here by the playground and there's such great access off of Hill Street for village staff to maintain the pumps, whether it's the generators or the pumps themselves, this situation or this location made a whole lot of sense rather than putting it somewhere a little bit further deeper into the park where we'd have to then provide some sort of access route, that the larger equipment could potentially disrupt. And so that's really one of the reasons why we landed on this, was to make it as least disruptive for the park district as possible, but also providing some screening.
I'm concerned, my concern is how disruptive it may be to the residents of that area. So even if that pump can be moved, even if it is further on Park District, or maybe moved to the south a little bit, or to the, to the west more, a little bit toward that playground, it might, it might be more on Park District land, but it would minimize the noise for the residents, which I think would be probably, which I'm sure they're somewhat concerned about.
Commissioner Clark, a question that came up earlier is the testing of the generator.
Yeah.
Our water management staff will test the generator once a month, and that test will run between 15 and 30 minutes.
Okay. I mean, my neighbors have generators, and they do test it, and the noise is, I guess I'm so maybe once a month that they test it, but it is, I can hear it. It's a little bit annoying to hear, but so I'll just, bring it up. It's something that disturbs me if you're outdoors, or it kind of disturbs your peace. So, So anyway, that's just my concern. If there's any ways, either by landscaping or by moving it, somewhat, it may be able to reduce the noise from the neighbors. I would just keep that in mind. On that.
Absolutely, and we show a note here about landscape screening, but that's something that we've been made aware of, and we're going to really focus our attention on that landscape screening in this area.
Vice President Goebel, I believe you had your hand up.
Great, thank you. First of all, thank you, Mr. Olson, for walking us through the plan in such detail, very easy to follow. And it's exciting to see the plans at this stage. I think what is coming with Hamilton will be a positive, as well as we look at how we put the park back together and what that entails. I think we have some big fans of berms and or sledding hills in these parks, so that will be a nice process. To that end, what is our plan? And this is a question for Ms. Berger as much as Director Wilson. What is our plan around community input to gauge what goes back in and or any concerns of the community?
Sure. Well, our plan, first we wanted the park board to have an opportunity to see the plan before we brought it up to the community.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And then our plan would be end of June, beginning sometime in July. Having a public meeting in this pandemic situations could be a little bit difficult, so I'm not sure what exactly that meeting would look like, whether it be a Zoom meeting, smaller neighborhood meetings of smaller groups. But our goal now is to reach out to the community with this level of detail and start gaining their public input and modifying the plan based on that. And then obviously with future variations, we would come back to the park board. I think the next stage, Darren, correct me if I'm wrong, would be at 90%, or if there were a big scope change between now and 90%, we could certainly come back again and have another community meeting before we go out to bid. So there'll be many opportunities between now and going out to bid to make sure we gain the public feedback that we know is so necessary.
Great, thank you so much.
And I think we would run a very similar process to what we did, where we would again do similar to what the village just outlined, where we would be in the parks seeking input, not necessarily on the aspects of the tank, but on the amenities within the park when it's restored.
Very good. Thank you so much.
And I believe Commissioner Abbott has his hand up.
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Yep. Okay. I appreciate the questions with regard to all these questions. They're all great. Certainly with regard to community input, both the questions and Bridget, your answers to those. It does seem to me that there are some significant issues being worked out. Primarily, one of the big ones is the footprint of the actual tank and how that will impact things like trees and the design. I guess I'd be curious, before we get to 90% drawings, just be curious to know, where did the design end up? And so that, we get to see that before we push the drawings too far down the line. So that's my comment. So I'm done.
Great. I guess any other comments from anyone or any questions from anyone on the board?
No, I'm good for this stage.
All right. Well, then, Darren and Bridget and Tom, I know you would love. Oh, wait, Commissioner Wolf just put her hand up.
All right, I just have one more question. I noticed on here one of the trees, I think it was an evergreen, it said it could possibly be relocated. Is there any other opportunity to relocate any of the other trees that are being removed? Right there on the south, the south corner, evergreen tree. You were right. You just had it. Evergreen tree to be removed.
Commissioner Wolf, I will talk to our forester. I believe most of the trees, if not all of the trees proposed to be removed, are too big for transplanting. I don't believe that they would be successful, but I'll certainly run that through our arborist just to verify that.
Perfect, thanks. I'm sure we can always find an alternate location in a park somewhere, so thank you.
And Vice President Goebel?
Just had one follow-up question with respect to Thornwood. You know, give us a range of when we might have a similar conversation. Is that this fall? Is it winter? Just for advanced planning purposes.
Well, we don't have a contract in place to start the final design on Thornwood. So that conversation will probably be next year, right about the same time, or a little bit sooner.
Thank you. I know it is a ways off, so thanks.
Sure.
Any other questions before we let our friends go here? All right. Thank you to all the engineers.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Yeah, no, it was very good presentations. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, President Anderson, I think your next item is the approval of the
voucher list.
And I think we need a motion to approve the voucher list in the amount of $461,858.99, a record that will be attached to the permanent record.
So moved.
Something like that.
Yep.
Who moved?
So moved.
Vice President Goebel, second.
Second.
Is that a record low? Is that what you meant to say?
I didn't
400,000?
necessarily mean to say it that way, but that is a record low amount. The amount last year at this time was $3 million more than that dollar amount. So I think you can see how the pandemic is impacting a lot of things, including how we spend money.
Well, and my compliments to the staff for trimming costs as best we can. So yes.
Any questions on the voucher list before we do a roll call?
Yes.
Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I just had a question about the water at the golf course. I assume that was for 2019. I wanted you to give us a quick summary. How often has that happened in the past, and why are we being billed so far after the fact?
So, yes, it has happened one other time other than last year. The pumps are from the mid-90s for a course that has now been changed and renovated, and the water consumption currently is at a higher rate than our pumps are able to produce. So for the last 2 years, we've hooked up. This year, 2019, the rate in which we were charged was a lot higher than the prior year. And so we've been in a lot of debate, and quite honestly, prior superintendents of parks were addressing that, and in transition, it got dropped, and then the invoice was represented to us from the village, so we paid it.
So just for clarity then, Steve, that's the actual amount of extra water that we needed, not all the water we needed, because we pump our own.
Correct.
Okay. I had the same question Commissioner Murdoch had.
Any other questions? Would you like a roll call vote?
I don't see any other alternative.
Okay. And I've already lost that piece of paper. Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch?
Yes.
Commissioner Schisler?
Yes. Sorry.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Voucher list is approved.
All right. Item 6, Executive Director's Report.
Great. Not a lot in here that isn't actually a specific agenda item. So in my report, I touched on the Hibbert Park stormwater project, which we just had a presentation and discussion around. The rest of my report are about the Gilson Park Comprehensive Plan consultant selection, which is under the Lakefront Committee. And then lastly, under unfinished business, we have a financial discussion that I will share a little bit more information than what was in your packet in Superintendent Boyd's report for further discussion. And short and sweet.
Thank you. All right, committee reports. We got the Lakefront up first.
Yes, well, we had a meeting last Monday night. Thank you. And the primary, we had a staff report. As you all know, the Lakefront is up and operational again. I'm going to go through that first. Sailing was open on May 9th. We've got 605 vessels. Their staff is going through the wait lists they're still calling people about taking spots, but the expectation is that we will fill up sailing. We're not renting boats, and that has given us an opportunity, because we've lost a lot of sailing beats, to reconfigure the sailing beats to bring in the owner permit boats. The Lakefront is open. We're taking transactions online. The Lakefront Swimming Beach is only for there's no daily passes. It's all yearly passes. I think most people know that by now. The water was opened up this past week, and staff is doing a terrific job. Certainly, it's glorious down there. So it is swim at your own risk, and lifeguards are being trained, and that's pretty well. I think that's it, most of it for the staff report. We do have a fairly big decision to make here tonight, and we have a recommendation from the, but it was a 2-to-1 recommendation with regard to the two revised proposals. So I'm just going to quickly, there's no editorializing here. It's just we've got a proposal, new proposal from the Lakota Group, a little over $60,000 for the Master Plan Phase 2, and we've got one for Hitchcock Design Group, a little over $30,000. I trust most people have had a chance to review them to their own satisfaction. The Lakefront Committee, in a 2-to-1 vote, did recommend Lakota, which would include the Woodhouse Tanucci as a joint venture partner, but the proposals from Lakota. And I'm going to turn it over to other members of the committee and the entire board for discussion. I do hope that we can move forward together with whatever decisions that we make. I think that's the most important thing that we can do here. But let's have a discussion about who we're hiring. And I don't know that I want to start this. I can turn this over to Todd or Cecilia. Would you like to lead this?
I mean, I think it kind of is, two of us thought Lakota was, and one of us thought that the other group was the best. And
sure.
I mean, I guess I may say that I voted in favor of Hitchcock.
Sure.
And I will say that. But I feel like I turn over to the board, and if anyone else has any questions or any comments on.
Well, Cecilia, I think it's important for you to go ahead and sort of go through your reasoning for Hitchcock. I mean, you have, these are legit.
Yeah. I mean, my reasoning for Hitchcock, and when I read through the two revised proposals, and I do feel that when I read through Lakota, I felt that it was it was better than the original proposal we received. But I still felt like Lakota was, I don't know, but they were too big. That they would be a good choice if we had a blank piece of land and that we were creating a park. from it, that they would be the choice to go with, but we're not doing that. We're not reimagining Gilson. We are working on what we have with what we have. And in that sense, I feel like Lakota's just too big. It's as too much closer, like $30,000 more than Hitchcock. And that Hitchcock was more focusing. And also I will add that Hitchcock was, of those two groups, was the only one who talked about grants and finding funding for some of what we were doing in addition to that, where that it was just a more focused proposal on the lakefront and what we were asking to be done. That was just my view.
Yes, and I think that those are absolutely completely legitimate findings with regard to the proposals that we've received. I will go through now. I came down on the side of taking the Lakota, and I'll go a little more briefly than I did in the committee. I started with a little bit of the history. I think we've been at this for 13 years, 7 years. I've been on this. This committee has existed for 7 years. I've been privileged to be a member. We have always struggled a little bit with continuity. We've certainly struggled with success. We've had our downs, and lately we've had our ups with some success. And so I highly value the fact that we have finally been able to turn that around and get some success. A master plan is a service. It's not really a product. It's very difficult to put your finger on what exactly a master plan is. The only gauge for success of a master plan is success. If it succeeds, then you've done a good job. There isn't really any other way to evaluate how good a job a master plan did. If everybody loves the results to do the project, then it must have come out pretty well. It's hard to define the scope. The RFP, it's hard to define what it is we're supposed to deliver. I likened it to writing a song. Anybody, believe me guys, I could write a song. It just wouldn't be a very good one. And so the challenge is how good is the master plan going to be? Lakota, their proposal certainly had, to me, it was notably more in depth. They had about 15 meetings. Though there were about 5 community meetings, they didn't put a number on them. They put numbers on the other 10 meetings, compared to what I think was 8 meetings, public meetings for the Hitchcock group. There was an email written by Ken Morrison, who, full disclosure, I've known Ken for 20 years. We both were on this Makajwan master planning that's taken place all spring long. He gave his impressions of why Lakota was selected for that project. It's a good email. You can certainly read it if you want to find some insights. I can't tell Ken what to write, but it was certainly, but I agree with his assessment. He wrote it, so it didn't come from me. But it was good and helpful. So what does Lakota, what does Lakota bring? Because I have to admit, I was kind of skeptical after the interview that we had last December. Clearly, I think they excel with regard to the stakeholder process. Certainly, Woodhouse-Tanucci did, and they proved themselves in terms of stakeholder meetings and getting the community on board. But Lakota seems to have a history of doing that quite well, and that for the Makajwan master plan, that's what they responded to, and why Lakota was successful picking that one up. They have a lot of meetings. They really go after that stakeholder, getting momentum, getting top buy-in. They are planners. I'm not sure how good they are designers. I cannot speak to that, although they are joint venturing with Woodhouse-Tanucci. So speaking about Woodhouse-Tanucci, I think I've told Andy Tanucci that you're more of a map planner than you think you are. But certainly, they did a remarkable job with regard to phase one, the beach house. and the continuity that they would bring to the master plan here. Certainly the roads aren't very difficult to imagine, but I do believe that the sidewalks within and the landscaping within the parks do present both challenges and tremendous opportunities, especially the extension of the boardwalk. I think that's been very successful, and seeing that continue, tying the ends of the park together. I was very impressed with Woodhouse Tanucci's simple solutions to sort of esoteric goals about building anticipation, build as you approach the park. And every time I go there, I just smile because, like, wow, they really delivered. So the success, both the Woodhouse Tanucci being on the team, the success that they had with regard to the community, and the design sort of inspiration that they brought to the park, things that we didn't see that they did and sort of brilliantly laid out, speaks to me. Hitchcock, I think we could be successful. I think that, I'm not going to guarantee anything, but I think the Lakota proposal combined with Woodhouse, that's a heck of a combination, Lakota and Woodhouse. I think, I don't want to guarantee success, but boy, I feel really good about it. With Hitchcock, I think that the onus is going to be on the board to sell this thing and to be really engaged with regard to community outreach. We have a checkered history with that, and but it couldn't be successful. I don't think there's going to be very much. There's no Langdon Beach House to be targets to shoot at. So could we be successful with Hitchcock? We can. We're going to have to be much more engaged and involved with that. We're going to have to make it successful. It's going to be on us. How's the design going to be? Could be great. I don't know. So I went with Lakota, and I want to open it up to the full board because really everybody should be involved in this decision. Gilson's Gilson. So I'm gonna stop talking now and ask Commissioner Anderson or President Anderson or any of the board members to comment.
I believe had her hand up for a while. Commissioner Wolf?
Go ahead. You can go ahead, Gordon, if you want to.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I don't know that we heard what Todd had to say as the third member of that committee.
The immediate dollar amount is more, but in the scope of the entire project, it's inconsequential. I also think that we've had success with them before. I have been impressed with them. I did sit in on the presentation that they made and liked what they had to say. For me, why wreck something you've already been successful with? So I, too, supported Lakota.
Thank you. Who wants to be first of the rest of us?
I'll go. I had a question. So I sat in on the original presentations, and both groups are very obviously respected, have a lot to offer, both of us. My biggest concern is the cost difference. I feel like I need to have a really good reason to be able to go back to the public and say we're spending twice as much on this planning with one group versus the other because of X, Y, and Z. And I just haven't gotten to a really good reason why Lakota is worth double the amount that the other group is proposing.
Well, I guess I'm the guy who'll answer that. Unless Steve, unless you want to have any insights here. I'm speculating because I can't know for sure. I don't talk to them on the phone. There are two things that I see in the proposals. One is the number of meetings, the outreach, the number of meetings. Not quite double, but almost double. And I think that those, we proved that those were very important in terms of bringing the emotional level of the community down and in bridging the divide of what had been a fairly confrontational view of what was going to happen at Gilson. Maybe we're not. in that situation now. Maybe the community isn't, up in arms. But the number of meetings, particularly with the community, is much higher in the Lakota Woodhouse-Tanucci proposal. And the other thing, and again, I'm speculating, but it's two firms. Lakota, there aren't that many. Lakota is highly respected as a planning firm. There's two firms. That's why.
I kind of go back to what Commissioner Clark said, that we're not building anything here. We're not doing anything different. We're just fixing up the park and enhancing the other side. So do we need two firms? Do we need input meetings, to your point? Like, is it worth the value to do that? And I guess I'm just trying to get a handle on that.
I think that's the question. Right. That is the question. For me, I've answered it yes. I'm saying yes. But look, and Cecilia, Commissioner Clark, is saying no. So I appreciate it. You don't want to waste the money. To me, again, 30,000, 60,000, success. I'm going like in the end, this board spent a lot of money on Williams Architects when we didn't end up building it. And so, and we got criticized for it. Maybe we should. So every time you go into these things, you don't really know. And so I just want to trying to bring up our batting average here, and I'm going for what I consider to be the much more solid, higher rate of success. So, but each of you have to decide. I cannot answer for you whether or not the extra $30,000. For me, yes.
All I have.
Who else has their hands up?
No one at this point.
Commissioner Murdoch?
Because Cecilia's done such a good job.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, first off, with respect to the other $30,000, it's not double the cost because, of course, it's the cost of the entire project. If this project ends up being a $2 or $3 million project, the extra 1 or 1.5% is negligible in the scope of the project. I think, as Brian had mentioned, we went down this road before. I don't know how much money we spent on JJR and Williams, and we had nothing to show for it. So a good public process and good planning gives us a higher probability of getting a project done, and I think that's what's most critical. We have an architect who we've worked with very successfully, and to be honest with you, in hearing from the three commissioners and our executive director who worked with Andy in the past, I keep hearing again and again and again that he works well with our public, and we all know that our public has, very strong feelings about Gilson. When I was on the board the last time around, we spent 4 years talking about this, and ultimately, going after I stepped off with some of you, we didn't get done what we had hoped to get done. So I think what's unambiguous is that having Andy lead the public process allowed us to accomplish the beach house, which was a significant portion of this project. I think we should use him to finish the project, and I'm hoping that the continuity in design will also pay off in terms of continuing some design elements from the beach house project to the rest of the park. The other thing that I would say is that Hitchcock really feels to me a lot like JJR. I wasn't entirely comfortable working with JJR when we worked with them the last time around. I got the sense that they were a big firm and they do things a certain way, and we were sort of along for the ride. And I'm not saying that's how we ended up with the problems we ended up when we got to the referendum, or the referenda technically. But whatever it was, something went off the track sometime along the line. I don't think it was just Williams. I think a lot of it had to do with JJR. And as I sat in those meetings listening to Hitchcock, I felt like they seemed like a very similar firm to JJR to me. That made me extremely uncomfortable. So those would be my comments. I think that going back to Brian's statement, we're kind of getting two for the price of one. The other $30,000 in the context of the overall project is not significant, and I think that they are including more meetings, which history has told us, getting the public on board, having those meetings, helping them understand that we don't have an agenda, that we want to hear from them and we want to do what the public wants, I think will ultimately lead to success. So for me, this is a no-brainer.
Commissioner Goldwasser. Vice President Goldwasser.
Right, thank you. Broadly speaking, I found both had compelling proposals. I think what tipped the balance for me toward Lakota was the way that they approached and had reference to some of our history. From a financial perspective, the difference in the initial proposal, while could be just called significant, is not that significant. And when we look at the full project, we may in fact pick up $30,000 to $60,000 in savings as we go forward, and or choose to save that much. And so I'm comfortable with proceeding with Lakota. I saw a few drawbacks to Hitchcock, but I did prefer Lakota in this case.
All right. I think am I the only one who hasn't spoken yet?
Yes.
Okay, Steve, I'd like you to kind of weigh in when I'm done too, because you have shared some things that you thought were important with me, and probably with other commissioners, but maybe not all of them. So I'll ask you to do that. Normally I have a very strong opinion one way or the other on things. This is one that's a little bit more difficult, but I can live with either company. I thought they both, in terms of the presentations, I thought Hitchcock nailed their presentation. They've been consistent the whole way in terms of having their pencil sharpened. I think the Lakota proposal, the initial one, was so far out of the ballpark in terms of cost, and they kind of got their act together for the second one. And I like the idea of having a 2-for-1. At the same time, I don't like the idea of having 2-for-1. And let me explain that to you. We got two alpha dogs with Lakota and with Andy Tanucci, and just given kind of what we've seen in terms of the proposals that have come, I'm not sensing that there's a lot of communication or enough communication, and I just worry about any time we go through with the project, how well are they going to work together? And that's just, maybe it's an unfounded worry, but just I've seen enough other things in other places where when you get two strong people who have their very strong opinions and are used to getting their way, you don't know how they're going to end up. Now, I know Steve has indicated that he's willing to play referee behind the scenes, but it is something I do get concerned about. In terms of the cost, I think the cost is a factor, but to everybody's point that's supporting Lakota, in the big scheme of things, it's not that big, and the extra meetings, I think, are probably the best use of our money that we got, because this is, the public input process that Andy gets, and he has a good reputation, is really, really important, more so than a lot of the other stuff. So in that sense, I really like the idea of having Andy dealing with the public. And the continuity of design, I think, is important too. I mean, I'm a guy who doesn't like to spend money, but when I get value for it, I'm all for it. And I think we get the value from Andy in that. And I guess I'll turn it over to you, Steve, at this point.
Okay. So a couple things. I will start and end this with, we can work with anyone as a staff. So whatever decision the board makes, the staff will be totally fine working with whomever we work with. With that being said, I know that I stated at the outset of this that the partnership of Lakota and Woodhouse Tanucci was one that I thought was an ideal team. our experience with Woodhouse Tanucci and Andy Tanucci in particular was a very positive process. It started with, some individuals within our community who had memories of the referendum, and they were very quickly turned around into allies of the project because they were heard, their thoughts were considered, and that's really what people want. And I thought that Andy did a great job with that. And Lakota has a history of working within our community and nearby communities at a very high success rate, including the master plan for the downtown Wilmette area. So I was very excited about it. Obviously, the initial proposal, from a cost perspective, Lakota was significantly higher. Hitchcock, I wasn't as impressed with their written proposal, but their presentation went very, very well. And I thought they really spoke to more of what we were looking for, which is, I believe, why the board convened a committee of the whole to refocus the scope and the approach that they want the two consultants to consider, go back and revise their proposals and resubmit. And so ultimately I can work with anyone, Superintendent Solberg can work with anybody, but ultimately I think I have a high comfort level in Lakota and Woodhouse Tanucci. And another factor to Commissioner Wolf's question about what kind of offsetting savings or justification is there for spending more money, the Beach House project came in significantly under budget, and a lot of that had to do with Woodhouse Tanucci's direct involvement, not just in the planning and the public input and drawing of designs, but being involved in the construction and advocating on behalf of us as a district and Wilmette as a community to make sure that costs were contained as much as possible. So there is an opportunity potentially in this project for a similar outcome, but we can't predict the future.
Okay.
Hands everywhere, Gordon. I think Brian had his hand up first.
It's fine. I've spoken enough, and I think you kind of touched on some of the outpouring that Woodhouse had in 2016 from people who were opposed to the referendum, who came in and said, you got to hire that guy. That was really all I was going to say. That's one of the things you can say to people. They do enjoy tremendous support within the community. That's it. Done. I've spoken enough.
Commissioner Wolf,
I was just going to say, after hearing a lot of the comments, I can understand, I have a better sense of why you all feel comfortable moving forward with Lakota, and I could get behind that decision as well.
Anybody else?
No more hands at this point.
All right. I guess, how do we want to, who do we start the, I think I sort of know where everybody's at this point, but let's kind of have everybody either give Lakota Tanucci or Hitchcock the thumbs up.
I give Lakota the thumbs up for me.
Steve, do we need a formal vote here, or is this just going back to committee with our
ultimately, I just need direction on who to draft a contract with. The contract comes back to the board for full approval.
Okay, all right. So,
well, unless my count is wrong, shouldn't we just introduce a motion for Lakota? If anybody objects to that, I will not make that motion. Anybody object for any reason, but
question, Steve, do we need a formal motion, or is it?
We have typically done a formal motion at this point, where a motion to the effect of direct staff to draft a contract with Lakota and bring back to the board for full approval is typically the type of motion we have at this point.
If Commissioner Abbott asked the motion, I'll second it.
Yeah.
Sure. So I'm going to make a motion to accept the proposal from Lakota Group, the most recent, and I can't get my fingers on it, there's a date. Oh, anyway, the most recent proposal from the $60,000 range for Lakota Group for Phase 2 Master Plan of Gilson Park, and to draft a contract, for staff to draft a contract. It was disjointed. Somebody cleaned that up, but
We got it.
Very good.
okay.
Second from Vice President Goebel. Any further discussion before we do a roll call? All right, hearing none. Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch?
Yes.
Commissioner Schisler?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Can I abstain? I mean, I'm not, I'm still, my vote is the same. I would say no, but I'm outvoted.
It's fine. It's okay. You get your vote.
We've all been outvoted.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
All right, motion is approved, and we will begin contract work.
If I could make one final comment on this, I think some of us have heard former Commissioner Crowley was famously used to say, to get anything done, you have to count to 4. Obviously, simple majority, but I think for something as important as this, something that we've been talking about for so many years, I do think it's important that the board comes to a consensus. I don't think we need to be unanimous, but I was pleased to see that there's consensus here on this. So, thank you.
Okay. That concludes the Lakefront report.
Okay, Parks and Rec, Commissioner Murdoch.
I had to unmute myself again. Let me pull up my notes because we had a long meeting. Hold on. All right. So Parks and Rec met earlier this evening, and the primary focus of our conversation was about our current level of activities and our planned activities and the changes from what we normally do. Picking up on Julia's question with respect to Thornwood Park and I'm sorry, with respect to Hibbard, the community input process, we did talk a little bit about how we're going to go about doing that with respect to community play fields and potential amenities. And I'm hoping at the end of this conversation, all of the commissioners can weigh in on that. But to start, we outlined the camps and some of the changes we're seeing in the camps this year. This year we have a camp, I believe it's referred to as Play Safe Wilmette, which is effectively a child care camp. In the first session, we have about 400 spaces, and residents have claimed 180 of them through today. We haven't opened them up to non-residents yet, and we think that the capacity will be larger later in the season if we get to a phase 4 with the governor's guidance. The Pirate Tennis Camp, which my kids did and I know is incredibly popular, is not going to occur this year. Instead, there's going to be an outside the lines tennis camp that is, again, mostly going to be outside. That's already in a waitlist situation, and I'm assured by staff that Pirate Tennis Camp will be back again next year, provided we can do it safely. Aquatics Camp had no change except in the first session, capacity was reduced by 75%. We think that in phase 4, it will be reduced, but not nearly as dramatically. There are a number of contract camps, Coach Aid Soccer, et cetera, that have been modified but are available. And for residents who are wondering if they weren't able to have the camps they wanted because of capacity constraints or changes or whatever the case may be, we've been in the process of taking care of those refunds, and we think all of the refunds will be processed by tomorrow. We are looking at other types of summer programs we can still do, dance, art, gymnastics, dog training, and a lot of that's still a work in progress as we get more word from the governor in terms of guidance on what we can and can't do. We have begun field rentals, baseball, softball, soccer, some others. At this point, according to the governor's guidelines, competitions are not permitted, but practices and inter-squad and whatnot can be done. And so I know that a number of us received emails over the last week or two, specifically from the Wilmette Baseball Association, and we can all be assured that those practices have started. I drove by West Park and I saw a team out there just today. So I think we're making progress there. With respect to the pool, apparently Just this past Friday, we were given guidance that we can open up for lap swimming. Also, I believe for diving, swim teams, some lessons and some therapy. We are doing some last-minute repairs and filling the pool, and we expect the pool to be open for lap swimming the week of June 22nd. And when phase 4 begins, we believe we can potentially expand further, but again, work in progress. The ice, for a variety of reasons, we melted the ice. We took down the ice during this period of time. Obviously, it saved some money, but it also allowed us to do some maintenance that we typically do on a 7 to 10 year cycle, and we were due for that. So we're in the process. I believe the ice is back in place, and they're striping it, painting the lines right now, and the ice should be up and running June 15th. During phase 3, we can only have 10 participants on the studio rink and 20 on the full rink, but the 20 have to divide between the two sides of the ice. Outdoor tennis is open. Indoor tennis will be available for private lessons and small groups of related folks with our instructors. So if anybody in the community is looking for that, please reach out to the tennis facility. The fitness center is open for one-on-one training at this point, but with a maximum of 3 pairs at any one time in the facility. We are offering outdoor classes at this point, beginning, I believe, June 15th. And again, they have a 10-person maximum. The gymnastics camp, just like aquatics and some of the other camps, we've had tremendous demand for that. So in order to try to accommodate as many people as possible, we have shortened the slots to allow more people to participate. We've again restarted the gymnastics team, and we're hoping to restart the ever popular mom and top programs in phase 4 of the reopening. The skate park and basketball are open, but everybody should be aware that playgrounds are still not open. I understand that some of the caution tape has been taken down from time to time at some of the playgrounds. That's not our decision. That's, again, the governor's decision. And so we would ask our residents to respect that and not use the playgrounds at this point. Finally, we wanted to talk a little bit about community input with respect to the playfields amenities. I think, as everybody's aware, part of our agreement with the village allowed us to, part of our agreement required the village to fund certain amenities, a number of them specifically at the community playfields, if we choose to have those amenities. And so we as a group need to talk about that further. And in the Parks and Rec Committee meeting, we suggested that we direct staff to have provide a community survey, get the results back, and then do a series of public input meetings so that we can decide what's appropriate for community playfields. And I assume we would then use the same format at both Hibbard and at Thornwood as we move forward with those. So I would at this point open it up to the other commissioners and ask if anybody has other suggestions about how we should gauge community input with respect to the community playfields. Thank you. Anyone? All right, that's my report. Mm-hmm. That's my report.
All right, next up is golf.
Hold on, I think Commissioner Clark's going to...
I guess there was a question on how do we gauge the community input, or how do we take community input for the, what we do on the play fields. And I think you were the one who raised the point of maybe having some outdoor meetings might be one way of doing that. And I don't know about posting it on the Park District website, or sending out your one of your emails with the news on what's going on in the Park District, asking for that. So just raising that. So, okay, I'm done.
I think Commissioner Abbott has his hand up.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, it took me forever to press the buttons. Yeah, the idea of community input would be very helpful. I think ultimately, as long as we listen to our community, then I think we have to make a credible effort. Mr. Neil Ferrari, back March 20th, sent what I thought was a pretty good email. And he talked about because they not only live on the community playfield, they also live right off of Locust. And he was quite impressed with the village's outreach with regard to that Locust Road project, which included open houses, leaflets, making sure people were informed. There were open houses where people had a chance to come in and comment on the project. He would encourage us to dedicate some time to community outreach, input, not just 3 minutes at the beginning of a meeting, but with the genuine give and take with regard to what these amenities might look like. What's their intent, and so some open houses is what he is suggesting. That's all.
All right. Anybody else for Parks and Rec? All right, golf. Are you?
Golf met on June 2nd. Golf sounds like it's having a very, very busy time these days as being one of the few activities that people can get out. Well, I guess we're getting into more and more, but it was one of the original activities where people could get out and get some exercise. So that's good. We had some presentations from, I guess it was just from Adam. Nick was not in our meeting, but, and Steve went through a few things for us, but currently at the course, they're installing some backflow preventers to help when we do have large rain events so that water is not pooling on the course, isn't able to go back out into specifically the kind of Skokie forest area and some other drainage places. They're continuing to do lots of mowing after the rain. May was one of the rainiest months. So the grass was growing really, really well, which is good, but it also requires a lot of mowing. But the course is in great condition. So if you haven't been out there, I suggest you to make a tee time. On May 29th, we opened up to foursomes and carts for single-use riders, which was great because it allowed some other people to get on the course. The golf shop is now open and the restaurant patio is now open. So even if you're not playing golf, you can go over and get a meal outside there. It's a beautiful scene to have dinner or lunch sitting out there on the golf course. The driving range is at 50% and the putting course is open as well. We're currently doing some private golf lessons, which have been a big success and a lot of people wanting to do that. There is no water on the course, so if you are going to play, make sure you bring your own water. The beverage cart is out, but if you want water, it's probably best to bring a water bottle so that you're staying hydrated, especially when it gets really warm. As of June 1st, we opened back up for memberships, and we are doing a prorated membership. It's about 80% of the cost of normal, so that started June 1st. We have 27 foursome permanent tee times. This is down from about 40 this time last year, which is kind of to be expected given the uncertain conditions of when people could be out there. So, but it's good to know that there's still some foursomes getting out there. The Ladies League started last week or this week, this week I believe, when we had our meeting next week. So started this week, so that's exciting that they're getting out there. Golf camp, there's not going to be any full day golf camp. However, we are still offering half day golf camp. And there will be in groups of 10 so that they can be safe and socially distanced as well. There's also no junior league this summer because of the restraints that were put on by the league and the state. But we are going to be hosting family golf on Tuesday nights, which was a huge hit last summer, and I'm sure a lot of families will like to get out there with their kids and be able to do that again. All golf outings have been postponed until mid-July. If at all, that all depends on whether or not we're into phase 4. And again, what the state regulations are around golf outings. If we're only at 50 people, is it worth it for these venues to come out and do that? So we'll have to wait and see. Finally, next we discussed the financial situation. We're currently at about 60% of the revenue, or we're expecting about 60% of the revenue in June, July, and August compared to last year. So not a perfect scenario, but not horrible either. So we're lucky to be able to have the golf course up and running. And again, our memberships are about 20% behind what they were this time last year. So that puts things into perspective there. As far as other financial issues, because maintenance has eliminated overtime, we're finding some savings, about $25,000 to $35,000 a year, so that's good. But we are finding more maintenance issues in regards to having to disinfect the carts every time someone uses them. So there's a little bit more work that's being done in that area. The other impact on our revenue comes in at the tee times. Currently, the state regulations say that they have to be every 10-minute intervals. We used to have them more frequent, and so we lose about 7 foursomes a day, which doesn't sound like much, but it does add up when you look at every day over a month, over several months. So it definitely is impacting us. And we should have a better picture of what the financials will look like through now and through the season at the end of June. They're putting some forecasting together and some models. So hopefully after our next meeting, we'll have a little bit more information. And finally, we discussed the cart path project, which has been put on hold due to us delaying all of our large capital expenditures during this time. We are, however, still moving forward with the planning because that was already in process, but it's something that if we get to a point where we say we still don't want to move forward with this, we can put it on hold and we'll still have those plans for a future date. Or if we get to that point and say we want to move forward with it, we can. It's not something that has to be decided in the next month or even the next 2 months. It's something more for a fall time frame. So we're still okay with that. We're also looking at whether or not we can get some sort of funding for that project, how we're going to fund it, if there's some debt options or some debt certificates that we can use to fund that. But we're looking into all those things at the golf committee, and that's my report.
Great. Anybody got any questions for Commissioner Wolf? Must have been a good presentation.
It's a good time. Get out there. It's actually, the course is absolutely beautiful. It's such a great thing to do nowadays. I mean, it's always a great thing to do, but especially during this. So.
Yep. Oh, Vice President Goebel.
Sorry, Vice President Goebel.
I know we didn't have a meeting, but we've got a meeting coming up, hopefully.
That's right. We have a meeting coming up, and we look forward to discussing the projections. We appreciate Superintendent Foy's work thus far to reconcile the year. I'm sure Director Wilson has some comments, which he'll speak to in a moment. But our committee will meet in the coming week, and I'll have a full report in the next meeting.
Great.
I think I saw Commissioner Abbott's hand.
He's good.
He's good.
Okay. Steve, you want to talk a little bit about what's going to get covered in the next, we've got the audit.
Sure. The audit is in kind of the home stretch, and we're hoping to get that sooner than later for the Finance Committee to review. Typically, the audit must be completed and filed with all the different entities it must be filed with within 6 months at the end of your fiscal year, which would be June 30th for us as we're a calendar fiscal year. But because the world is as upside down as it is, they have extended that deadline. So Superintendent Foy has been working through all of that information with our auditors from Lauterbach and Amen, and we should be receiving a draft report here in pretty short order, I believe. I don't remember the exact time frame that she told me. And then the other item that will be kind of the focus of the Finance Committee meeting when they meet next are a set of projections. So you saw in the board packet behind my director's report was a report from Superintendent Foy where we were provided financials through April 30th, as well as information regarding 2019, as well as information regarding capital projects. And then what we've been working on together between myself, Superintendent Foy, and Superintendent Gwynn is trying to do projections for the remainder of the year now that our summer is somewhat kind of taking shape, but also then looking at what a fall in a phase 3 scenario and a phase 4 scenario might look like. And I circulated via email to the commissioners kind of a first blush of that late this afternoon. There's still a lot of work that must be done on it, but I wanted to get where we stood to all of you. So any questions and any input that any of you have that we can receive back from you in advance of a finance committee meeting will just make for a better overall discussion and get us to a better product and a better model. But I can assure you that Superintendent Foy is going to be beating up that model because I took first stab at it this weekend. So she's going to prove it out or disprove it here in the next couple days.
I'd like to point out that we've sort of looked at 2 scenarios right now, just to keep the workload down. One was a continuation of phase 3 through the rest of the year, and the other was moving to phase 4 for the fall. And, you know, when we get kind of through those, I'd like to have us look at what happens if we have a recurrence and then go back to phase 2 again. Because everybody's talking about the possibility of it flaming back up again in the fall. And, you know, while we hope it's a low probability, we sort of have to, you know, at least look at what happens if it does. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to put too many options on you to start, though.
I believe Commissioner Wolf has her hand up.
I just had a question. Are we discussing just the financial projections now, or also the other financial information that was in that memo that was in our packet?
Well, we can discuss whatever you want. We're on unfinished business. So year-to-date financial review. So that's the information that's in the report that was attached to the director's report.
Yeah. So I just have a few questions on that. The financial projections they're staggering, I guess, because we just don't know what's going to happen. But I just had a few questions on the other document. I don't know if this is the time to ask that.
Feel free.
Okay. On that first page, the memo, it says that our property tax revenues are higher than planned by 1.1K. Is that 1.1 million? Is the K million, or is that a typo?
I don't believe it's a typo. Superintendent Foy, feel free to unmute and jump in here.
So I don't have it in front of me, but it could be a typo. What happened with the budget was the numbers were spread evenly across the months, and that's not how we receive our revenues. So we get a bunch of revenue like in the beginning Q1, and then we'll get another bunch of revenue in Q3, because you know how property taxes are being paid. So we may be ahead by 1.1 million, and it might be $1 million. The year-end projection should come in at what we budgeted for the end of 2020.
Okay.
So it's just a timing difference.
Okay.
Well, I think
sorry, Amy, just a typo.
Because looking at
typo.
It's a typo. Looking at the budget number year to date, it's 3.3, and our actual year to date is 4.4. The difference there is 1.1 million.
Okay. I just did this much. I just wanted to...
Let me point out in the total year budget column, in the line property taxes,
there's a typo. Yeah, there's a typo.
We're missing 3 zeros there.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can't really look at that far right column without adjusting for 8.6 million.
And then I had a question on the revenue and expense statement as of April 30th. So it has our salaries and wages of $135,000 as a surplus, if you will. Is that due to our part-time staff being reduced?
Yes.
So we assume that there will continue to be some salary and wages that number should still have some surplus, again, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
No, then I was going to ask you, and then the next sheet, the reforecasted budget, when did we reforecast the 2019 budget?
So reforecasting is our projected budget. Remember when we do the projections during the budget process?
Yes.
So that's what those numbers represent.
Differently.
Yeah.
Okay.
The same numbers, just different terminology.
Okay, because I was like, wait, did we go back and do a budget that I missed somewhere along the way? I was just a little bit confused there. Okay. I think that was all my questions. Thanks.
So I do want to point out what Commissioner Wolf was asking about there in particular with salaries. Remember, salaries are not typically paid up until the moment the check is cut. They are after the fact. There's a lag there. So that number within salaries that compared to budget is going, that differential is going to increase at somewhat of an accelerated point of view here going forward, because also, think about the month of May where we tend to be hiring a lot of people in to get ready for summer operations so we can train them, and that's taking place right now. So the month of May is going to have a much different look to it. Also, I'd point out on employee benefits, we doubled up on our expense in April, so that's going to flatten out as well in May. Commissioner Wolf, your hand's up again.
I just have one last question. On our property taxes, we had budgeted for 2020 to be at 3.3 million and change as our property taxes to date, but we're actually at 4.4 million. So how is it that we're getting an extra million in property taxes? Is it?
It's timing. It's a timing difference. What happens is we budget the payments equally over the 12 months. We actually get a higher amount of taxes when the tax bills go out in February. And then it'll, there'll be less amounts, and then it'll be another big spike in August when the next set of.
Gotcha. Okay. That's what we were discussing before. Gotcha. Thanks. Mm-hmm.
So the relevant comparison is really actual 19 to actual 20. Those are very close.
Exactly.
Yeah, one of the things I always look at here is the revenues and the expenses, but taking out the property taxes and just looking at sort of the pure operations. And if you look at that, the budget had 8.6 million of operating revenue and 5.5 million of operating expenses. And so you end up with about 3.1 of sort of an operating surplus. Right now, year to date, we've got about 4.7 million of revenues and 4.7 of expenses. So we're basically at break even through the 4 months, and therefore we're down 3.1 million in the operating surplus from budget. And if you think about it, really March and April were the 2 first months that were impacted. We didn't really get any savings in March, but we got revenue shortfalls, and in April then we've got both savings and revenue shortfalls, and then we sort of made up a lot of it in the capital side because we've only spent 400 versus $1.3 million in the budget, so that 3.1 million shortfall is maybe 2.2 after the capital has been reduced. So that's just so through April we're $2.2 million sort of behind our operating budget, if you will, and going forward we're going to lose more, millions more. So we have to keep the the foot on the brake here in terms of the spending. And can't wait to see the revised projections, because the old budget now is sort of out the window. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions on the finances?
I think it's great you're on top of it now, Steve, because it's sort of, we've been, all of us, you guys included, have been waiting for this, so it's great.
Yes, Superintendent Foy has done yeoman's work to get us to this point, so we're in good hands and we're going to keep pushing it forward.
Right. Okay. And any other questions on the, well, I guess year-to-date financial review? Sort of skip right to that. Okay. No questions on the finances? Anybody want to move to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Steve.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sheila.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks.